I'm 9 o'clock right now.
Yeah.
Oh, you can go work.
Oh, Chris is here too.
I'll spread it.
We'll go ahead and start through the agenda until,
Come back to guests.
yeah, oh, no, yeah, yes, yeah. So I'll start around table. Right up, the chairman of the board. You'll be. Brian Barron.
No, I know that. When you know me.
That's all right.
Jason Axman, Executive Director.
You're Director of Planning and the Secretary.
Kate Williams, Operations Manager.
All right, everybody.
Do we want to have the Zoom?
Hi, Krista.
Hey guys, your audio is a little lacking, but I can hear Kate pretty well and Kiera a little bit too. So I'll try to hang on for a little bit and see what I can hear.
So, yeah. You could put this up.
I think I had the sound of talking properly. Wait, someone else say something.
We'll try and report. You got your during the.
How's that, Carissa?
Still doing guests around, so
Oh,
wherever you can fit in.
Can you talk again, Chris?
Hey, Kiera, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I was just said I can hear Kate really well when she speaks and a little bit of Kiera, but it's hard to hear the rest of the room.
We'll talk loud.
All right. Thanks.
I think it should be fixed now because I switched to the owl.
Okay. Oh, that's what she reviewed.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Carissa Knapp, former land bank board member, county administrator. Been working for the county for 20 years.
And
I think I know most people there.
We have Athena Waller.
Yes, I'm I'm with Clinton Brown. I can't see Clinton through the video here, but I'm sure him and Jill are in the room.
Yeah, Jill just got here, and this is Jill, everybody. She's with Clinton Brown also. At least Brian's here. Oh, that's perfect. So Jill. Oh, there he is. We'll give you guys a second to settle in. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, sit wherever you can, and thank you. We just did guests, we just did, get to know everybody, so you want us to go back around?
Nah, hello, everybody.
Hello.
And I apologize, we arrived early at the county office building. And the sheriff's on duty. Didn't really know that this place exists, so.
No, it's okay.
Only been in use for 21 years.
It isn't like that old. Oh, yeah, so that's when they're. Yeah, and so we're gonna skip you to the head of the.
One more.
Here.
Yep, we've met, one more.
Oh, yeah.
You want to introduce yourself? Ashley, we got, some guests here. And the thing, so if you want to just introduce yourself.
sure. I'm Ashley Smith, Director of Economic Development for Allegheny County.
Clinton Brown, very good to see you in person, actually.
Same.
And Jill Nowicki, you met Jill?
Yeah.
Very good.
All right, we're gonna skip right to Clinton Brown's, presentation.
No, the small piece of the pages, you're putting on. Oh, good morning, Tina. Thanks for being here. Is this a good place for me to be?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We have two,
Square round table.
we have two, paper copies at full size if you need them. Your mission is to, take vacant and abandoned properties and facilitate a return to productive use. So that's right in alignment with why my firm does what we do. We focus on collaboratively designing new reasons for historic buildings and heritage places to be, from a business point of view, to attract investment, to create new performance for the people they serve, and to keep them out of the landfill. So we have been working on this for more than 30 years, and we're really grateful to be here. Allegheny County, I was introduced through Kerr and our work on the Genesee Valley with Nicole and Rick Hauser, and great leadership there. So we're so grateful for the opportunity for the origin of, I grew up drinking Genesee beer. Maybe I shouldn't admit that, but anyway, the purpose of this study was to figure out what to do with this really interesting and important building in an interesting and important hamlet that time has passed by. And we came into this with gratitude to answer the request for proposals to be selected, thinking what we saw once we were hired in the initial videos that John and Jason provided us, that we may have one site visit and give back the majority of the initial minimum payment because there's no hope. And yet when we did visit, we did our homework, we found that this is an important building historically, and more than half of it is available for reuse. It needs major surgery, but the major surgery can occur within a footprint to create anywhere from 6 to 9 attainable units of housing in a place that needs them. The building across the street burned and displaced, I think, 10 or 12 people who now need a place to live. The other thing is, the hamlet is the kind of place that attracts outside investment because of the quality of life of Allegheny County. And we saw that in Cuba, where for many years we were working with Mayor Miller there on the New York Main Street project that attracted local investment, but also people who came to know Cuba and retired from New York City and reinvested in in buildings there to make Cuba really glow in a way that it didn't when they first started. I don't know if you know Lionel and Terry, they do an amazing job there. They're very close with Alma McConnell Brown, who runs our New York Main Street programs. She still stays in touch. And so that's what we see is an opportunity for friendship that needs a cooperative effort. But right now, this is the opportunity to prime the pump. So I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jill Nowicki to go through the options that we studied that are before you. Jill, are you ready?
Sure, so to first start, we went through as a team, for structural and building investigation on site with Peter Radko, Rock Hill Engineering, who's the structural engineer, and us as architect.
Bring your volume up because the
Oh.
space.
I don't know if I can, but.
There you go. You can have that.
That's perfect.
Okay. We went through the building with Peter Radko of Rock Hill Engineering, and, concurred that the building is in rough shape, no doubt about it. But there is a clear delineation of the portion of the building that is severely deteriorated and or failed, and the part that is retrievable. So it's roughly about a 50% line halfway through back from the front facade. Just to sort of in rough calculations, it's about 50% back. And so after we saw that and conferred with the structural engineer, there's roughly half that's maybe able to be saved and half that likely is not able to be saved. So then what do? So we started off taking a look at options, and the first option that we looked at was full demolition. What does full demolition look like? So full demolition would look like some another structural, investigation. The demolition would require, public safety on the sidewalk side and also the rear, also stabilization of the buildings adjacent on both sides. The full removal, including asbestos remediation prior to demo or in conjunction with it. And filling the site, the hole that would be left, and then providing site security after that. So roughly, we think at about a $300,000 project just for demo, all inclusive. So there is some advantages to full demo. It's probably maybe the fastest, easiest way to take care of what some might consider a challenge. There might be some cost savings, in relationship to stabilization. It's certainly cheaper than full rehabilitation. It's pretty predictable. The risks are pretty known, and can be controlled. And it would create a clean slate for something potentially. But there are challenges to demolition, or I would say, disadvantages. One, does it fulfill your mission? Organizationally, there is a historic loss. The main street will be forever scarred if it's removed. It does potentially, maybe make it more challenging for the village to get a historic designation of the district with that building and the Bird building now being losses in there. It's a missed opportunity of rehabilitating it.
Well, there's an economic aspect too. That lot will never in our lifetime be, I predict, unfortunately, be worth 300,000 that's been invested into it.
That'd be large there. And we've seen a couple buildings down where someone tore that building down there. Now they put up like a wrought iron fence and gate, and they have picnic tables and outdoor kitchen, and they do little community stuff in there. That's nice for the community, but now it has this limited use that you have to stop doing that limited use. Now you have to tell people we can't picnic anymore. We're gonna try to build a building there someday, and then they never do. It actually upends community development to take something that should be commercial and put like a little picnic area in the middle of that main street like that. So that would be another something like that, another, something that would just inhibit people from actually going there.
And while Allegheny County's been blessed with an increase in property value and therefore an increase in property taxes and a decrease in assessment for, this would not produce, the vacant lot would not produce tax value that is appreciable versus the opportunity to produce tax value longer term by a rehabilitation. Sorry to interrupt, but
That's okay. And the next one, I think that kind of recaps the demo, but the next strategy is stabilization and mothballing. So mothballing is the term we use in the preservation world, and it does have sort of a strategic plan to that. First, there's the documentation aspect of documenting what's there, what's historic, the conditions assessment. We're partly through that process right now. And then comes the stabilization phase, where we first stabilize the structure so that no more adverse harm can come to the building, but also public safety. That's gonna require sort of a surgical removal of the bad portions of the building, new roof, and to make weather tight the exterior envelope. So that's probably like some kind of boarding on the windows, some security measures to keep people out of it, to make sure that it's causing no more public harm or potential risk to the public realm and to adjacent buildings to either side, making sure that no pests or animals people can get into the building, and also doing the removals of any hazardous material. And then mothballing is securing the building, ventilation, making sure the minimum mechanical systems are installed, and maintenance and monitoring. So the advantage of this is you save the building, you say the majority of the building of what can be saved until there's a time when somebody can redevelop it. So this is not meant to be permanent. This is a temporary measure. I would say probably in the 3 to 5 year range at the most. So it buys you time, buys people time, to make a plan for redevelopment without losing the building, but also reducing risk to the building and to the public. Keeps future options open, and it also helps stabilize the property values of the immediate area while we're waiting for redevelopment, because the building isn't sitting there deteriorating in time. But the disadvantages is that there is a front cost without the guarantee of something happening in the future. There is a deterioration risk of some material while it sits there. But again, the advantage is really that it's maintained, it's not further deteriorating, and in the meantime, we're trying to put a plan in place to redevelop it. And as far as budget, this is about the same range as demo, so we're looking still in that $300,000 to maybe $350,000 range.
Just putting a coat of paint on it would make all the difference. You know, look at the rendering here, it's just putting a coat of paint on it. Unshuttering the windows, and a very important piece that would not be in your jurisdiction as having site control is that sidewalk. The sidewalk right now, the front sidewalk, which is presumably the town's, is sloping and draining water into the foundation. And the foundation wall is crumbling as a result of that under the front of the building. There has been racking. If you look at the basement pictures, you'll see those walls running along the center angle. They're 5.5 degrees. Interesting enough, it didn't translate to the upper building. We don't know why, but it hasn't damaged the upper part. But it's translated because over time, you know how long the sidewalk's been that way, 10, 20 years. It has caused that front foundation wall to move, which of course lowers the sidewalk, which admits more water. So that's probably the biggest threat in any case to be dealt with as soon as possible is to get that water into the street where it belongs.
We do have a relationship with Mr. Sorter, purchased the property from myself.
You get it, talk.
The town of Frederick is, well, hopefully specifically said he thinks it should come down, but he also, when you've been in there as a water guy.
Yeah,
Other builders who've been in there said that the front wall that's falling in isn't gonna affect the building because most of the load is on the lateral walls on the side, which are next to 2 other buildings, so they're all pretty sound. It's the front and the back that would, if it removed and put it back in without much effort. I just also wanted to point out that we have in our latest grant, we budgeted $250,000 for this project, which cannot be used for demo, it can only be used for stabilization.
So in terms of the fix, we've reviewed with Peter Racka, the engineer, structural engineer, the notion of just basically reinforcing the damaged rubble stone wall with a new concrete wall up against it. And we've done that before, another project in Wyoming County, where there was a structural steel solution, but the solution was to stop the movement. And that combined with getting the water out, is relatively low cost stabilization of that particular wall.
And then, oh, I'm sorry. go
is
ahead.
that a permanent fix or is that, okay?
Yes, so that, as Jason was pointing out, that front wall is carrying very little weight. But the sooner we could deal with that, the more reassuring it would be that there's a future for the building. And certainly, you know, worst case is it's not dealt with, because you don't step in and no one else does, and the sidewalk collapses. It's not imminent. It survived the Clinton Brown jump test where I jump on the sidewalk and it moves. That's my structural engineering expertise. It served me well, but this is something that would be one of the first things to just hold on to the building, is to just make sure that water's not coming in. The water's coming in on the back to the north off of the roof, and that's a matter of getting some gutters up there on that metal roof and diverting the water away from the basement.
Yeah, Friendship,
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Friendship's applied for a grant, or are they in the process of it? That wouldn't include like, I mean, it's just a study, correct? Okay.
I do have a question just for clarity. So you're saying you would reinforce the structure in the basement, so the foundation wall? And then does the town would then need to repair the sidewalk? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because the sidewalk is causing the problem. In my view, the building's not causing the problem, the building's the victim of the sidewalk. And it would be interesting if someone would take some videos the next heavy rain and watch what happens to the. John, you're so good at that. Yes, and would watch there and other buildings. That is particularly acute situation, but just watching where the water goes. Because I don't know that there are storm inlets on the street. I don't know where the water goes on the street.
I think it's fair to mention too, that the other side, from half of that building, it's also connected to the sidewalk, was already redone once as well. And it's actually holding up very well after it's been redone.
Yeah, cause there's two storefronts, and under one storefront is what we're talking about, and the other one has been rebuilt.
So is that sidewalk, is that responsible, is that Friendship's responsibility, or is that the state's? Is that a state road?
That's a county road.
County road, okay. I think like the Bob around 417, that would be a state, and they would be responsible for that, so.
But is the county responsible?
Typically, the sidewalks are the local units, but I don't know how this one's set up.
Again, this was, we came in here with a really low cost, thinking we wouldn't have the opportunity to present a solution. So there's still some homework to do that we didn't do, at this point, because we didn't know that there'd be such a good, opportunity for you to go forward as there is.
So do you see building, the stabilizing would be ripping the back of the building off and then building it back in its footprint and then mothballing? Or
Stabilization would be spending the least to keep the structure, stop the bleeding. We call it triage. Triage might not be full demolition at this point in order to conserve money.
of the back thing, like
Yeah.
say, just kind of do something temporary to stop the back of the building from.
Seal the building up, fix the foundation you're talking about, the drainage.
Yes.
Because there's considerable water coming in the back of the building from the roof, from the port they made to go up onto the roof and stuff like that, that's. I'm just getting the ideas out there, we've already talked about this, I'm just getting it out there.
Yes, so in these situations, the least necessary is a first phase. Because generally people don't have all the money in hand. You have the money in hand, so we would work with you to spend it wisely. If you decide to go forward with the project, and we think you should go forward with the project. This is
Another question on the back half. Currently, there's water coming through the roof on the back half.
Correct.
It does not appear to be coming through the roof since the roof was covered with metal. It's just minor leaks, but what's happening is that the water's running off the roof and down the face of the back of the building and into the basement, so.
Yeah, so
Gutters,
you put gutters on the backside and that takes care of the water. So there's really no money necessarily other than money for the gutters. Just as part of the mothball project.
we would, yes, that's the simplest solution, we like simple solutions, it's short term, but it's a simple solution that
Right.
can happen before winter.
Well, I just didn't want to put a lot of money in it and then tear it down.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that would work.
Exactly, yep, no one's more pecuniary than I am, rest assured. We wanna nurse this, building back to health, spending is.
Yeah, what I was saying also, Darsh, where they made a hatch to go up onto the roof, and that must have got ice swelled underneath it, and it doesn't seal anymore, so that's a minor fix too, but it's not the roof failing, it's an aspect of the roof.
So,
That's correct, it's been stabilized, to hold it in place, for now, but there are these other measures that will help reduce the stress on the rest of the structure.
So is your presentation, stabilization and mothballing are two different things, or is it the same?
It's, so mothballing process includes stabilization.
Right.
But I think the mothballing is like, it's sort of the preservation treatment of stabilizing it. Some buildings don't need as much stabilization, so mothballing to some buildings may be ventilation, boarding the windows, security and monitoring. You have a larger stabilization component to the mothballing, so I would say they're sort of one and the same.
Okay,
But stabilization is a component to the overall mothballing.
so the stabilization and mothballing is that 300 to 350,000,
Yeah,
okay.
Yes. And I would
There'll be some annual costs in this mothballing because it's over however duration we need. But we don't want it to turn into a 15-year mothballing
Yeah.
plan. It's really meant for a short term. To stabilize, button up the envelope, make it secure, and maintain it in place until a time when it can be either restored, rehabilitated.
So I would say, that's an excellent question, and if we go into talk about jargon, please call us on it. I would say stabilization is just stopping the bleeding. Mothballing is actively, being monitored in the emergency room.
Okay.
So the active monitoring would ideally include electricity, for lighting, fire and smoke detection systems. And, again, ideally, a small furnace to keep the building from freezing. Someone going by and checking it regularly is an active part of mothballing. And then, you've got, we've got some good people here.
Smile.
And then, ventilation, for dispersing moisture. So there'd be fans taking some air out of the building, so that it doesn't, rot from the inside due to any moisture that gets in there. Because there's moisture coming in up from the ground too, it appears. So it's stabilization is sort of stopping the bleeding, triage. Mothballing is a little more active management, until the patient is ready for surgery, I think.
Is there any,
So the 350,000 would includes the electric and minor heatings.
Yeah,
So you, would you divide off the two halves, not bother about heating the backside? Or would you heat the whole thing?
it's one open building, so it'll be difficult to segregate that. And the, numbers are rough, they need to be confirmed in the next. But the idea is,
So it could be 500,000.
no. It would not make sense to be 500,000, and it'd be hard to spend 500,000.
is any of this, stabilization, other than I understand the foundation effort, the rest of it wouldn't really be reused when we eventually get to fixing the building, right?
The front end.
Well, that's an excellent question.
Can you repeat? I didn't hear the question.
So the $300,000 would be putting into it, except for the foundational work, it seems like most of this stuff is, just the Band-Aid is put it to get us from here to there. It's not likely any of that is gonna be reusable once we actually go to build it.
Electric service would be a good.
Yeah,
Must be good.
So, we don't have the answer yet, it takes, we can be faster, accurate on something like that. The next step would be, how do we move to the next level of detail in figuring out how to wisely spend those funds? It may be on further review, that some portions of the third floor need to come out now, and we don't know that. The other aspect of it is, the goal is not to do it yourselves is to make the building attractive to someone else to finish it. That's been your model, of this organization, and that's a smart way to do things. So any dollar spent on the building can translate into historic tax credits, valued at currently 50% of the costs if the entire project's less than 2.5 million of qualified rehabilitation expenditures. The building is determined eligible for listing in the National Register. It's not currently listed. That would be the next step. But that will be very attractive because someone coming in and spending $2 million potentially gets $1 million back under the current legislation, which we think at this point, if the application goes in before the Congress adopts the budget it's considering, because the historic tax credits, the administration would like to eliminate the historic tax credit. The Congress saved it after the last administration, in the 2017 bill. We hope they save it again, but if you get the application in before the laws change, you'll be grandfathered. So the question is, this will make it, the more you're able to afford to spend wisely, the more the developer will not be spending, because the building is more rehabilitatable at less risk. So that's the balance to find. We haven't found it yet. That's the next step. So that's how these things tie together, and why your timing is very important at this time. So we didn't say this in the report, but really starting to market. It's not too early to start marketing, and I know Jason is as usual ahead of us in terms of looking and identifying at people who would take this on and trying to tailor the money to that prospective redeveloper or class of redeveloper. And they're basically people who like to renovate, rehabilitate, and put buildings back into service, but don't want the responsibilities of management. They're not interested in management. They generally partner with someone who will manage it after they've done their work. You have a bigger class of people who are interested in managing apartments, managing commercial properties, but they don't know how to undertake, they don't have the deep pockets to undertake the risk of rehabilitating them in the first place. So part of making it rehabilitatable is to try to attract both those kinds of prospective redevelopers to take the building off your hands, having prepared it for that market, those people who are out there. Right now, there's a class of folks who are working across upstate in rural communities where there's growth. There's growth here for their natural beauty. They're getting out of the city. All these, they're being Airbnbs, all these things, and that group is looking for projects like this in places like this, where some of the heavy lifting of saving the building has been done already. So I hope that answers some of your questions. And Jill, do you want to keep going on why we think rehabilitation is the way to go?
Well, I would just say that the last thing we looked at was a full rehabilitation. And to be clear, this could either be done after a period of mothballing and stabilization, or it could be done right now. So we offer the stabilization and mothballing because we feel that's probably the interim step that the process would naturally take. But if you had a developer right now, we really could move into a full rehab, although we think this likely would happen after a period of stabilization. We do feel that to make economic sense, this would need to take advantage of state and federal historic tax credit incentives. I don't know if everybody understands, but those projects are reviewed by the Secretary of the Interior Standards for rehabilitation. So those are sort of 10 commandments to make sure that no adverse impact is being done upon historic buildings, features. And so because we're going to be probably getting 30% in a state and 20% in the federal tax credit. Now the state and at the State Historic Preservation Office and on the federal side, the National Park Service becomes investors in the project. So they do have a say in the treatment and how things go. So as you read through this report, you might hear us say things like reconstruction. Because we don't wanna necessarily call the new construction of the back half an addition, because additions don't qualify for tax credits, but reconstruction within the existing footprints do. So there might be a strange terminology, because I think in the construction world, it would naturally make sense that we would call this new construction an addition. We're calling it a reconstruction within the existing footprint, so that QREs can be maintained. So there is a process, for that, and this is likely the longest of the three options. So demolition is the fastest, this is the longest as far as a process. But we save the building, we invest in the local community, we put local contractors to work in very highly skilled, realms. We have a property that's earning, tax revenue, so I think there's a lot of benefits. It is higher cost. We're gonna need to partner with the people throughout this process. And potentially the land bank's doing it, potentially we take it to a point that the developer takes over the project. So there's lots of options there. And then rough numbers, we're at 2.2. Depending on what year this happens, this could very easily be in the $2.2, $2.5 million range, with 50% of QREs coming back. So QREs are anything spent on the footprint and within it that's attributable to a capital account, including soft costs such as architectural and engineering fees.
I just want to share one other thing. So Friendship is a pro-housing community. And it is expected that under the new budget, there will be, so Homes and Community Renewal are who doles out the grant funding for pro-housing. And so as of this year, there is funding available for pro-housing communities that is relative to mixed use and or residential. It can be grant stacked, just so you know, it can go with historical tax credits this year. And additionally, if the land bank were to take on this project, you do qualify. So that's additionally like a 50% reimbursement, just so you know.
Yeah, and Friendship is, I believe, last I checked, the only pro-housing community.
Correct.
And they, with the disinvestment in Friendship, are struggling to use it, so we could be that example of how, like, land bank use the pro-housing community money, then it could generate more people using it, and it's theirs. They want to show success, so applying for that might be an easy lift, because they want to roll that out and get people using it to show that it is good money, and that can be stacked with the land bank initiative money. So right now, we have $250,000 put towards the stabilization of this in our current grant. And when the next round opens, if we have committed this money into that building, we can go for more.
My first question for you.
Yeah. so
And
there's more money.
HCR is like the easiest state organization to work with, honestly.
For
If you're gonna
sure.
work with any of them, that's the one you wanna work
And
with.
we're already getting our LBI, our land bank initiative money from them, so they would, dovetail pretty nice.
You made a comment mixed into all that, related to the federal budget, which is in committee today, again. And that we needed to apply for the historic designation before they pass it.
Yes.
So that's like Friday.
No, that's an excellent question. The timing is critical, absolutely critical for two reasons. One is to retain the existing program and the people who are running it, because right now they're all being fired. And so that there are people in the government who are still working, that have no one to report to or work for. The second thing is the program's at risk. The previous Trump administration tried to zero out the program, and actually conservative Republicans from the South saved it on the commercial side. The state has its own homeowner program. Those senators are still there. and members of the House. And frankly, I think it's an easy one for them to do something different than what the president would like to do and not suffer the consequences, because there's really so little money involved. But everybody who's on the Hill interested in this is more concerned than they were last time. The other thing is the upside is new legislation introduced called the HTC GO, Historic Tax Credit Growth and Opportunity Act. And it is particularly of note that I got Jason's okay to let you know about this. I'm gonna pass around two documents. One's written for sort of tax credit developers, that's this one, Kate, and the other one's put in English for the rest of us. Yeah, but what this would mean for your project is that there would be a 60% credit, 30% state, 30% federal for small projects in rural areas. It's particularly designed for these kinds of projects by its sponsors, because this is where the market is across the country as well as upstate New York. There are expansions of not-for-profit use right now, and the commercial credit. What do you mean by expansion? Right now, under the commercial credit, you're limited to 50% or less of the building, 49% having a nonprofit occupant. And then this HTC GO bill would remove some or all of that limitation to having not-for-profit. So that expands your pool of developers and managers, because potentially it could be a not-for-profit that takes over from you to operate this housing. For people of low incomes, it's too small a project to take advantage of the state and federal low income housing tax credits, which are very lucrative. And they'll probably be saved because the president, most of the billionaires around them are low income housing tax credit investors in their own personal portfolios. So that's likely to be okay, but this project will be too small to qualify for the attention of the state and the federal government. It's very hard to get credits at this level of size and impact. So it's not necessarily an opportunity that the building would have on its own.
So my question is, does the town have to do that, or can we just do the application?
We have to do that. You need a professional to do
Well,
the
I
application.
want to distinguish, so there's, the historic tax credit application, which has a part one, which is a certification of a historic building for eligibility purposes for the tax credit program. That's what we're talking about. That is different than your official designation, which is the National Register nomination. The National Register nomination only has to be completed, I think it's 24 months.
30 months.
30 months after claiming the credit. So we have a little bit more time on that. The part one is what's critical for the timeline of the tax credits. And what they're gonna say is that it appears to be a contributing building to a potential historic district. But because there isn't a historic district, it will likely be sort of a draft nomination of the district in a way. That's what we've been seeing from the State Historic Preservation Office. So there's gonna have to be some work on the district in order to advance the part one. The part one, yes, we have a critical milestone because the program is in question from the administration, but technically that part one has to be in before the assets placed in service. That's the only
Regulatory deadline.
regulatory.
I'm just trying to figure out what we have to turn in by Friday.
Nothing yet.
What I'm hearing is we don't have to turn anything in by Friday, they do.
But in our direction, I presume.
That would be the next step, given the circumstances. And here's what the committee will report out to the full House and another committee to the Senate. The two will have to have a reconciliation bill, then it'll have to go to the president to sign. It took a year last time we went through this in 2017 with the job cuts and tax credit bill that the president would like to see continue, and not everybody's in agreement at this point. at the cost of it, so that's the discussion going on, I think we've got a ways to go. But meanwhile, it is prudent to get the part one in, going back to your original question.
Yeah, I just really was not sure if we can, just as an aside group, can do that application.
Great question.
Submit it, or does it have to be town board approved or anybody else approved? Because we're not the owner either, right now.
That's right.
So,
The answer is, the owner needs to sign the cover sheet of the part one application. The
Or
owner-
write a letter
or write a letter of support.
saying that they understand that it's being submitted.
Anybody can commission the part one, yes. So we've done that before, where one developer starts a project and has to transfer to another, they don't do it.
as long as the town doesn't have to do it, that's my big concern, because that would
Well,
be.
here's my next question is, to get the historic preservation part of it down the road, if that's the case, the town has to apply for that, so that's what I said last month.
The district, you're saying,
Huh?
to have it a district?
To have the district. That's what I said last month. I want Friendship Board on board, committed to do this, or why are we there?
Technically, anybody can submit a National Register nomination, but over 50% of the property owners have to
Right.
be okay with it. So I definitely agree with the strategy to get property owners on board, but technically the town doesn't have to produce it or submit it.
Technically what?
The town doesn't have to produce the nomination or submit the nomination. Anybody can do that, but over 50% of the property owners have to be in agreement with the district.
Right, so the town has to coordinate all that stuff.
Ideally,
Ideally.
They don't have to, but they usually do.
ideally, you
So
want
that's what I'm saying. Bottom line here is, if we don't have some commitment from the town Friendship Board, in my opinion, I say don't spend any money. Because down the road, ultimately, it has to be a historic district for the rest of the buildings on Main Street to do anything.
ultimately, yes, yes, that's true.
But hypothetically, if the town said, we don't wanna go out and we could go get those signatures ourselves.
Yeah, we could procure those signatures and pursue the same
So
thing.
why would we? If the town
They get
board
$100,000.
is not willing to invest economically,
Yeah, oh yeah, for
Then-
sure, I'm just saying, but it's,
baloney.
I don't know that
But
the
even if they
town's
fail-
not willing, but I already have the 50% property owners. So like contact with them, so I mean. there's-
Well, then the town board shouldn't have any problem just going ahead and starting the paperwork for their district.
Well, it
So
does
there-
cost money, so that's gonna be probably
Two
the.
processes. One process is to secure the tax credit opportunity
Understand.
for this particular building.
Understand?
The other is to eventually get the,
Well, then run them both in parallel. But Friendship, to me, Friendship Board election. Those people that are elected to the village board or the town board, if they don't have the wherewithal to figure out that they need to do something economically to save their community, then I'm saying, why do we invest any?
what would they be looking at the town as far as a financial investment into the historical district?
we gave you a proposal, I can't remember the number.
I don't remember, Kate, you remember?
25K, 25.
Yeah, I think it was 28. We were going to potentially for the Preserve New York grant. Yeah, and there was up to a $20,000 project with a 20% match. So I think it was somewhere around in there.
So they would have to come up with 7, what?
28,000.
No, he said match.
If they got that.
We prepared we proposed an application to a particular annual funding source that we've worked with for 20 years.
Okay,
That would be looking for a project like this. And Jason checked with the town, I think the answer was the town wasn't ready.
Well, it's closed, it's since closed, correct, that opportunity?
That
for the year?
particular,
Yeah, it was too short notice, we couldn't get it in front of them. It wasn't, they said, no, we didn't have time to even get it in front of them and move it along, we would have had to back them up and then I had to hope that they paid us, it would have been it was a no-go.
I guess all I'm saying, in my opinion, for my vote, town friendship board has to pass a resolution saying that they will proceed with the avenue of creating a historic district. That's just my opinion.
But they don't have to do that for us to put our building on the radar.
That is
Start the part one process.
But before we spend any money on the rehab part of it, they need to make that commitment, in my opinion.
And there's another reason that, this makes sense, because most of the properties eligible for being in a National Register Historic District are residential. And that program is a state program, actually, Assemblymember White, who created this land banking bill, did the same thing in Governor Patterson, 2008. I was there. He created the historic tax credit and the land banking opportunity for New York. The homeowners get a 20% state income tax credit
Right,
for applying for rehabilitating their house.
well, that's what we're doing on the road, right?
And that's, yes, exactly. And this is the opportunity in Friendship. So the majority are homeowners would have the opportunity to invest in their property and maintain property tax
They
value.
could use that. There's a lot of houses in Friendship that could use some
Yes,
TLC.
yes.
Okay, I've said my piece, that's where I stand.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but sometimes we see another strategy, and and I'm not disagreeing with what you said, but developers will pay for the district because they're getting $1 million. The 30,000 is just the means to the million. So I know where you're standing, but also we see that strategy happen as well, where developers will say, I'll pay for the district because it's worth it to me to get the tax credit.
Can we pay for it?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Our grant is.
Anyone can pay us. I can't speak for you.
It's an eligible, that would be an eligible expense. We don't have it budgeted right now, but it would be, something we could go after from.
You're missing the point. Friendship, town board have to be willing to go forward with economic development. That's my opinion.
Well, they
I
became a
think
pro
they
housing
are.
community, so they.
They're
they-
absolutely.
That means they've got to put some skin in the game, money wise.
I agree. It's anyway,
Don't know if they have 28,000.
they might not have it.
Well, that's it.
And then when's that next year?
If you do all these other things, it's only 7,000.
Yeah, but when's that grant open again? That we're
It'll open a year from now.
a year from now, so it'd be
So
a
the
year
grants
before
were
they
due.
would go after that money.
Yeah, the grants were due in April, they'll be announced in July, and, this was an ideal project for them. And other than getting the part one in, which would be something you might take on, the, National Register nomination entire district can be way here.
So if
point
we
is
approach, sorry, if we approached the town of Friendship and said, could they put the money in between now and when that grant opened and get reimbursed for the next round, or would they have?
No,
That
that
would
grant.
work, so they, anybody selected to get that grant, they have to wait until next year.
Yeah, and what's ideal about this Preserve New York grant is that the check is presented upon the award of the project being selected. So there's another reason why this is important. Anybody who's going to risk their own money, because that's ultimately what they're doing in this building of yours, is going to want to know that the environment they're working in is going to be well managed. And if the rest of the environment they're in is well managed, then they're going to be more confident about being not the only person there. So having a historic district and ideally having a local landmark board, that's the best way to preserve property values. That will help assure the developer they won't be the only one, that there'll be others coming in attracted by the tax credits who will make it safer for them over the longer term. That's just the way the world
And that's my
works.
point, basically. I mean, if the local town board is not willing to step up and say, yeah, we want to develop our community to enhance all this money that might be coming in, I'm saying, why would we bother?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jill, and I agree with you that the town needs to be a player.
I think at this point, our next step is to approach the town board and say, here's what we got going on.
That's all.
Here's, I know, and that we, not to
But
they're aware of this situation, but at this point, there's been no ask to them. So, I mean, I don't think they're gonna
How much is
disagree
it?
to be involved,
I don't
but
know.
like, as of right now, it's just, there's this study happening on this building. Maybe the land bank will take it, or maybe not, like, that's what the town's been informed of, you know what I mean?
And towards your point, we need something in their minutes. Stating that they've supported, they're willing to financially.
Somebody needs to explain in the short term to the town board, and if they pass a resolution, then I'm on board.
Do we have to wait for that meeting to do the part one though? I don't think we do.
No,
So the question is, how much is it gonna cost us to do the part one? I asked him, and he said to ask you, so.
Let me ask Clint, do you think that Chappelle's gonna make us do a draft district nomination for this?
Yes.
Then I'd say it's at least 50% of the nomination itself, realistically. And we're saying 28, but this is around 14. I'm just talking out loud here. And in an ideal case, we would have, 2 months to prepare it. Now, I know back from 2017, when we were in the same situation, we got some very abbreviated things submitted, knowing they'd get kicked back for additional information, just to get it in. So I assume we could take that strategy again. If we don't have the comfort of 8 weeks, but ideally, this work would be about, I would say, at least 8 weeks.
Yes, the level of quality is not an issue. What's an issue is getting it time stamped by the State Historic Preservation Office. And State Historic Preservation Office for any of this, takes an application for historic tax credits for National Register nominations and has a 30-day review period. Depending on how busy they are, they get back to the 30 days, say, you misspelled something, send it back, that buys them another 30 days. If it's not a situation like that, then we get it back in 30 days, we make any changes, if nothing goes in perfectly, and then they have another 30 days. But meanwhile, what's important is that it is in the system.
I was hoping you were gonna say it was $999. So that we didn't even have.
Jason, is that part of the budget money? Can we use the 250,000?
We can use, yeah, that could be part of
Or is
the,
that add in
it's pre-development, so it could be used,
Pre-development.
or we could roll it into, it could also be used as, I don't know if I'd have to ask to see if it was considered part of the other three, but it would just come off, it would just decrease the amount we have to buy gutters and stuff like that for that same building.
But we don't have enough to cover that whole 300 out of this year's budget anyway.
Well, yeah, that 300, I
So-
think is a high ball.
so when
in my
we-
opinion, but-
When we assumedly, the grant's gonna come up in August or thereabouts. Where you have to turn in for next year.
Yeah, they didn't really say when it's open, but yeah, hypothetically,
So, we can start the work, but we have to.
yeah, and we'll
We're gonna
also,
apply
we
for
could
it.
readjust budget, when we asked for the million that we got, that million was also for, we had budgeted in properties we still have not received from the county. So there's that too,
And you said there may be leftovers that we could go for on this year's.
right, so the land bank, so all the land banks were allowed a pot of money, only a handful of us got a part of that, and then they closed it, and they'll reopen that. Cause they wanna spend all the money that was allocated before this budget year, and then we're gonna see what happens when this budget year opens up, and then.
And when would that be?
I think, it should be this summer.
So the long and short of it is, we have money in our grant that can cover this. Is that right?
Correct.
I would make the motion that we authorize Clinton Brown to move forward with this with a not to exceed of $15,000.
I second
Any other discussion?
Yep. Okay. Right. The bottom line is, if we apply for this and they approve it, what's the penalty if we decide not to go forward with the project?
$14,000.
Money to spend.
Another good question, and the answer is you're at risk for what you paid us.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we're just establishing that the building, which is determined eligible for listing, is entitled to be called a certified historic structure. So the tax law says one has to have a certified historic structure. And it's just a different bureaucratic terminology than being determined eligible. So that's the step we have to take.
The benefit, another benefit is now the town of Friendship only owes half. If we're asking them an ask, we're covering about half the historic district. What you said.
The cost.
The
Yeah,
cost
I think that's the reasonable.
This is half of the total cost of the district.
Yeah, if we're willing to take on a
So
project.
that's, so the money that we're investing in this application is creditable to the 20-some thousand or 30,000.
It'll reduce the amount of work needed for the designation, because we're doing a chunk of that as part of the Part 1 work. I mean, ideally, two things go together, but not always. It's not always possible or economically feasible, so sometimes it's one foot in front of the other, but.
Yeah, I don't know if the two conflate, but anyway, that gets you.
Can I just, for the minutes, we're talking what should the terminology be? Part 1,
Historic preservation tax credit application, part 1. HPTCA, part 1. And determination of eligibility for the credit.
Thank you for fixing my motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm gonna jump right into, ownership of this building. Do we discuss that at this stage? I mean, we have told the owner that once it was determined if it was salvageable, we would then
what kind of thing?
we would take ownership of the building.
and what did we promise? 1 year tax?
1 year's taxes.
We didn't promise her that, we just talked about that.
Yeah.
She has not paid the taxes for this year.
So we're gonna owe that anyway.
Yeah.
So it would be,
I think we said whatever taxes were due for this year, because we knew we weren't getting, and then last year's taxes, I believe was the discussion that we had.
well, I think it was whatever she had invested. We assumed that she was gonna pay this year, and she did. So I would say just to clear up any, to make it current with taxes, to be able to transfer it over.
You know what it is?
Now, off the top of my head, it's less than 10,000.
Yeah, it's a minimum.
I'm looking.
I just think we should, in my opinion, take ownership of it. If we're gonna go through the process, it might better be our building, because she might get away and say, oh, you're doing what, and you're paying for it?
Yeah, and knowing how long it's been taken for property transfers, I'll still get that letter, so have her supporting it, so if we have it. To, in case the transfer doesn't go through and they need that, so she'll put, she's very proactive, she wants to see, she cares more about this building than she does the tax money or.
Yeah, and that's the impression I've gotten all along. However, people chase their.
No, it's under
It's in Fred's name.
friendship,
Rehabilitation Economic Development Organization.
I think in the tax law, it's F dot.
I'm just writing friendship.
I think it's, I don't think, I think it's
It spells it out on the property survey. Yeah. The entire ways and the entire name.
Not seeing that as friendship.
Here's what. I have,
Or how about a parcel ID, do we know that?
yes, there are 2 parcels. This building is on 2 parcels. I don't know if you can read that, but,
Scott.
can you put up a property survey and blow it up, please? So maybe we can read it too. Thank you. I just, again, I talked with Jason about this a little bit.
We just need the ID, that's all I'm really looking for.
Got a magnifier.
Don't need that, should be there.
Maybe if we all take ours and stack them. That's what I think. You got your glasses on, and she puts her readers over the top of them.
You guys zoom in that light that much, it's gonna be able to see the dot matrix on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
That's really
7,
weird.
8, 9. Gee, we're.
I mean, I have
It's not coming
Go
up.
find life.
I'll find it real quick for you. It's under West Main, oh, we doing it by number.
That's what I'm trying.
It's West Main.
Yeah, it's West Main.
I think it was.
46 West Main Street.
Getting a good signal, who knows that?
Yeah, it's not real good in here.
You can use a regular Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yeah, hold on, I got it here,
Yeah.
it's 182.12-2-11, that's your now.
I couldn't find it that way.
So it looks like the taxes are, never mind, those are
She's
transferred.
got it,
You got
between
it.
7,000 and 8,000 for last year and this year,
No, that would just be
It's
for
been good.
1 year. What's it?
this year.
Yeah, that was,
That's last year's school tax, so
First, the county taxes were about 2,500 for each side, so 5,000 last year, and then the school taxes were different for some reason, but. I mean, I can write it down exactly, go back.
You could add it up, that would be the motion.
well,
Okay,
Well, we're not doing we're just gonna do the January taxes. not
the
the
2023, for the one side I'm looking at, the 2023 county tax was 561, and the 2024 county tax was 2,468, almost $2,000 more. It went up in taxable. Yeah, I see why she doesn't want to pay it.
yeah,
Why would they do that? And did they revale or reassess the town of Friendship? Or would
I would have thought we all would have heard about a revale,
Yeah,
like they did in Wellsville.
yeah, 561 to 2,400 is. Yeah,
Maybe something burned off, that they had a deal,
maybe,
possible that was in the Friendship February zone, and that program is.
really.
Something.
Is it possible it's been misrepresented with wrong number of the bill?
Assessment, it couldn't be as,
All the above.
yeah, could have been all those things, exactly.
While you're thinking about that, and again, I checked with Jason, I don't know that he agrees with this, but it would be attractive to a developer to have the adjacent property that is under the same ownership and has an active income producing business in it.
That's TC's Diner on the corner.
And again, looking from the point of view of getting this property out from under you as soon as possible, to have those two buildings together, one of which has got an active business, presuming they would continue to operate it, will be more attractive. There's some risk, more risk that you're taking on. You would be under requirement to maintain it, to pay any costs that might be associated with it. There could be ways to structure a deal with the owner currently, or could be some form of site control or option. But they have a bigger project, spreading the cost of a project over a bigger footprint. Can be attractive to a developer rather than having a smaller project.
Jason.
There are one or two apartments.
Yeah, she does, and she, you get an income from it.
Income.
She does, she's not gonna want,
She's not gonna part with that.
yeah, she does, she needs it, she does.
Very
supplement
fortunate
her,
people there.
Yeah, and she doesn't even charge them rent in the winter, because they don't do good enough, like, she has an intimate relationship, she's not just a landlord, she has an intimate relationship with the people who rent it. So I don't see that as a, I think that's what I took
I put that
before,
down as
but
a
anything's worth discussing, I mean, if she.
later conversation.
It doesn't have to happen right now. I just want to put it on the table. And
so if we take over the property, we're tax exempt,
Yes.
Yeah,
so they
we got
use that
five.
tax value until. Somebody
Until we get
takes
it
it.
back.
They'll be looking at a bigger picture than
Yeah, they they're fine with that.
Until we get on the rolls here.
So we just wanted to also mention that we didn't see an easement, but while you're talking to her, it might, and acquiring this to get an easement so you can connect from, let's do this. Water Street to the back of your property would be
Yeah.
very
I'm gonna
beneficial.
come up here and flip the point.
There are water lines and sewer lines there as well as electrical lines. I'm assuming there's an easement, but again, it's not identified.
Yeah, it's not identified, so
There's the county, or the town, I mean, has access back
Yes.
there. The property owner that owns this believes that they own
All the way
All
up.
the way.
here and they do not. So there was a little dispute in that. But we initially thought that we owned it here, which would be, you see that line? That's where the actual parking lot driveway is. We thought that that was the line. And it's not, it comes out to here, here's the back entrances to the buildings, those little basement accesses. So we actually own more than we thought. So there is
It is
some
significant.
kind of right of way going through there to make it dumpsters out and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Come up with a number yet?
So there was also a conversation at the last, Friendship Town board meeting about a property owner wanting to give the town some property that would connect to our street.
That's good.
It's not directly behind that building, but it.
It's the one behind that one, I know, like.
So with the easement, there could be a connection.
Yeah.
Okay,
I agree.
give us the number.
There's gotta be some way.
Come on, Kate.
The taxes in 2024 were $7,322.35
7, what?
$7,322.
and 35 cents.
That was 2024.
That was 2024 tax levy. In 2025, the school taxes aren't out yet, but the county is 5,366.48. Seems to be around
$10,000.
Yeah, that's what the number, I would entertain,
If we get it done before the school taxes come out.
so is that a motion? No, offer $10,000.
I just made an addition in my head.
I'd entertain a motion and a number. Anybody?
Put me down.
What number are you gonna throw out there that we're
I
gonna?
thought you said 10.
10.
How you made it?
There's the there's the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
That second, any other discussion on purchase of 4-6 Main Street Friendship? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Buy the building. Yay.
Well, at least we don't.
That means you get 6.
So, Jason, what do you gotta do? Get a hold of Peter? Get a
Yeah, I'll give it
contractor
her, I'll
now?
give it her first and see if she has an attorney she's gonna use, and I'll link her attorney up with our attorney.
Just make sure his last name doesn't begin with a C, please.
Very good YouTube language right there.
And we're live.
All right, any other business for Clayton Brown? Thank you very much. That was very informative and thank you for your work.
Thank you. This is one of the most interesting, challenging projects. I've been looking to do a project like this. We only get the hard ones. Everybody else gets the easy ones.
Oh, I have something more. So Friday, Clinton and I sat down with, what would be his title? Dave's.
Dave Hurdley.
Yeah, what is it?
He's through, he came to us through, Free Maxing.
He's an accountant?
He's an accountant, they're accountants, they're really important, accounting firm. I was referred to someone there who was worked with before, and we've referred to people too, but, right now, one of the things that came up is that this project deserves a financial model being created to determine what can the rents pay for in the rehabilitation, what can the historic tax credits pay for, and what additional funding might be needed.
What is our gap gonna be? What are we?
Right, yeah, that's
Without like a pro forma to go out, we can't see. We want to have something that we could present to maybe the middleman, a bridge developer that gets us to the final, or someone wants to take on the bridge portion and the finished end. But till you see it in numbers, that's what, developers talk numbers, and but from our standpoint, having that laid out will show, okay, we have 250 to put into it now. What are we gonna need to go for next? And if we put that development model out there, that financial model will show the gap between what is actually gonna be worth or what a developer is willing to.
That's a good idea, I think. Yeah.
So we're moving forward on that. We haven't heard what their quote was, the financial. What is it?
Just sent an email.
Did he?
He's on his own, he's a
Yeah.
subcontractor, who's working for developers all the time, putting these together.
Yeah, he's in the Midwest, right?
He's in St. Louis, he knew exactly what we're asking for, when we told him here are the limitations. Because there are all kinds of ways to.
He was tracking right off the bat for sure.
But he understood, and he's preparing a proposal, he confirmed this morning, he's preparing his proposal. And this is going to be very helpful to you to know where to go to get any additional funding lined up. Or a developer's going to need to know that these kinds of, this is the gap based on what the market will produce an income to where they will be able to pay debt service.
even with the tax credits.
Hopefully,
So, there's likely to be a gap. You may know, you have to spend the money before you get the tax credit back. So somebody has to have the reassurance that they're going to risk their own money and get their money back. This was always in our mind in terms of knowing that was the next logical step. When we answered the RFP and started the project, we didn't know that this would be necessary. But what we've determined is that this is the next logical step to take. And so it would be an additional
Right,
service.
because the feasibility report that Clinton provided is great for us, and it's definitely gonna be something a developer wants to see. But that's not, the feasibility report is not gonna push them into buying or moving along. This financial model will be that necessary thing to justify financially to the developer.
The other thing is, it wouldn't be too early to look at a local bank that would be interested in purchasing the tax credits if you have a developer who can't use the tax credits. So as a developer, if you're gonna get $1 million of credits, you gotta have $1 million of income that the credit offsets. And while it's a refund from New York State of 30% of that cost, or 300,000.
Can you briefly describe how the commodities, what is it?
So the New York State credit is actually a refund. And the federal credit is a credit against federal income taxes that's paid out under 5 years, over 5 years. So you have to have that income at the federal level to apply the credit to, so that you're not paying that income tax. The state was very smart because there aren't enough income earners in New York State to justify the pricing of the credit for someone who's a tax credit investor. So it comes back as a refund. So let's go back to the scenario. If there's going to be $1 million coming back, 300,000, that's not gonna be, I'm sorry, it's not my forte to be taxed, we get it. But anyway, they're gonna get back a refund, less any taxes they owe, when they file the tax return on the asset being placed in service from the IRS point of view, and the part 3 of the tax credit application being approved from the National Park Service point of view.
Part 3 is what you submit when the project's fully complete.
That's right, so that's a nice incentive to someone, because while they're financing those expenditures, they'll have potentially a lump sum refund from the state to pay off the construction loan or other debt they've gone into to undertake the project.
And where does the bank come in? It's
And then, hold on, then the federal part, that was the state part, then the federal part, so say they owe income taxes for 5 years, that federal portion would go towards their federal income tax to cover it. But you can sell which part can you sell? You can sell part of it as a commodity, right?
All of those. So if the taxpayer undertakes the project can use historic tax credits, that's the most efficient situation. However, if you're in that position, you have many competitive opportunities to shelter your taxes. This is a form of tax shelter. So some developers will partner with a bank. New York State banks are highly taxed, and there are some banks, Evans, which has just been taken over by MBT out of Norwich, for instance, who would like a project like this, and they will put cash into the project in order to get the credit, and the credit is transferred to them because they become a tax credit owner of the project, and therefore able to take the benefits of taxes, depreciation, and the other benefits of ownership of depreciable property. So it could be that the candidate you elect to work with doesn't have the income to use all the credits efficiently. The credits can be used until
Because they're already using other type of products that relieve them from federal tax.
So they would partner with a bank that would do the construction loan, do the permanent financing, and take the credits. M&T Bank does that, but at a much higher level. There are certain banks that like local projects. Sometimes they overpay. This occasionally, believe it or not, this occasionally happens because it's a community benefit. They're gonna get other business and friendship. Don't count on that, but they will price the credit competitively so that makes the project more feasible.
Have you ever heard of a CDFI purchasing tax credit?
Yes, but again, the transaction costs are, to have to justify all the lawyers and accountants and the rest. So, and I don't know, Jason, that anybody's been able to bundle smaller projects. I know that there are some community tax credit firms, emerging where, what's his name in Springville did a community-based historic tax credit, or bought shares in a corporation. There's some limitations with that. For an arts center, Elma's been working with them, on their New York Main Street, grant. So there are these other options out there. But that's a sort of explanation of what the tax credit opportunity is. And it's designed for a situation like this, like many of these programs for areas that require a rehabilitation whose cost is greater than the market can bear. But they do stimulate the market. One of the reasons Buffalo's doing so well is Buffalo went all in for historic tax credits. Because basically in Buffalo, there's no unsubsidized significant project. And the historic tax credits, due to the historic nature there, we still have a lot of historic properties compared to Blackledge and Syracuse. Utica is just emerging. That's why you read so much about Buffalo's renaissance, while property values, we were just named a top 10 home ownership value, and those sorts of things. This is because the historic tax credits, both the historic homeowner tax credits and the commercial tax credits.
And one more thing, Sarah, I know everyone wants to move along, but we never touched on how the historic tax or historic designation will affect local code compliance. You want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, just real quick, once you're certified historic building, then you qualify for alternate code compliance, within the existing building code. So you can do different calculations to prove safety so that you can avoid certain things. So a typical one is like a second means of egress. Oh, sorry, a typical thing that we find is if the code requires a second means of egress, there's a calculation that you can do to prove that you have adequate safety, even if you can't provide that second means of egress. That's just an example.
What about fire suppression sprinklers on third floors and stuff like that? Is that some stuff you can't get around?
Yes, we
Energy code
usually
stuff though?
use the sprinklers to do the calculations. But I suppose,
But the energy code.
yeah, you're exempt from the New York State Energy Code Energy Conservation Code compliance, because certified buildings don't have to meet it. So you don't have to meet all the R values of walls and roofs and windows because you want to retain what's there. And you might not be able to meet those or at least test for meeting those. So that's some of the reason behind it.
Cross that off.
And that's not,
No, I just,
that's not just this building, but.
clear presentation. You got one line. One line of the meeting done. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your leadership. We really enjoyed being here. I'm gonna leave this for her.
Yep.
And, we have another copy to leave with you?
Yes.
Okay.
I requested, she approved it.
And then,
guys.
please, just a final plea, Congressman Langworthy is our congressman, right? He's a very important person. And, I was just with his former director, regional director Saturday, who's since gone to work for Claudia Penny. But, if you would please let your member of Congress know that the retention of the historic tax credit program is very important to your community. You're gonna be treated with a lot of respect, and I think this is a place where he could deviate from the president's agenda and not suffer any consequences. So
He throws my emails in the trash because I said so many.
this work, but we're also through the National Trust. On the sheet, there is a place to click. The letter's automatically generated. It's a generic letter that's going to every member of Congress across the country.
to say that the HTC Go is important to our community, please fund it. There are powerful, members of Congress who are behind this. Sherrod Brown, I think was one of them, or Hood was one of them, and Cassidy another. So this is, as you're pointing out, this is a critical time period for saving this opportunity for this program that will benefit your project directly. Thanks.
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 Jason, if you want to draft that and send it to me, I'll sign it.
Okay, great.
Because you know all of it.
Thank you for sharing this. Great.
Thanks, Dan.
You can look up all the.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, guys. All right, I'm gonna kind of put it in overdrive here. We have minutes to approve from the April 21st meeting. We could have a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Darwin will second.
any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We have a treasurer's report.
You'll see the colorful spreadsheets in a separate little packet. You can see the first page should be phase 1, year 3. This is our admin pot. And if you look in the bottom right corner, K is modified is to make it more clear what we've asked for and what we need to spend. So it says remaining to request. That means that there's some invoices that we've spent but haven't requested. So phase 1 is our admin money. We can ask this a quarter ahead of time. So we'll ask for X amount of money to spend up the next quarter, and then as that quarter dies down, we look at it, and see, are we over or under that? So that's why there's the top number, 82,886, that is available to draw, but only 80,000 of it is going to be unspent right now. And we'll be making a request for the following quarter this week to try to get us ahead of that. We're spending that at a good rate. The next page is phase 2. This is our previous grant, which is currently demo heavy. This is our more usable money. So with the land bank 2.2, which is on the next page, that money can only be used for bricks and mortar work or any type of work that's going to result in housing units. So we could use that money for a demo if we're going to demo and immediately build. But since we're not doing that at any of our sites, where this money would come out of. So we still have, Kate, do you want to explain what the 26 is down there?
It's 2 invoices. There was the chimney repair at Andover and the remaining of selected demolition of Grover.
Okay, yeah, so we had Kate's been scouring through QuickBooks to see what the accountant has been misclassified, why the numbers were so long, weren't matching up what was happening in real time. We found a lot of misclassified things, phase 2 stuff that was classified in phase 1, phase 1 stuff was classified in phase 2. And as we got that out, we realized that there was a couple invoices that went unrequested that we had paid. So we'll be making a request this week for that, even though we have a request for phase 2 money out right now. So there's between phase 2 and phase 2.2, we have 86, it should be hitting our 80 something, it should be hitting our bank account, and then this 26 will also be requested this week. The next page, LBI 2.2. That's that 85 right there that we spent over the last few weeks since we've got the okay. So they've given us the okay to spend for pre-development, non-bricks and mortar type work. Like for Clinton Brown, for the architectural drawings that we have coming up, asbestos testing, which we'll prove today. So this money, there's a request for this money to come in also.
You'll see I'll just go back to Jason, at the top, I also edited, there's a funds received, pending disbursement request and total funds. What we were missing before when we were reviewing this is we were only seeing revenue that had already come in from QuickBooks. We weren't seeing what Jason had put out to HCR to get back yet. So I added that line to make it a little bit more clear. You'll see we're waiting on 136,000 from HCR for 2.2. And that may be in the bank, because we didn't have access to the new statement yet. So since doing this last week and today, that may be there, but Darwin was gonna check.
And Dark,
Did you guys? You switched banks, right?
We'll get to that.
we're getting.
My only question was, does the state already know that?
There, yes, we had to do an ACH transfer thing and all that, they haven't, it's been submitted yet, because. I have to redo it, because Darby had to, they don't want any pen on it whatsoever, so I got the one with your signature, and I gotta go and Photoshop out the handwritten numbers and put them in digitally. But, that's, here nor there, but then the general funds, this is where Kate's investigation work showed up, that it's saying we have a 144 available, then with the bank, that means that we should have that much in the bank account, but there was money, there was a period where she was charging stuff to LBI two, to phase two, but was actually spending the general fund, so the general fund is considerably lower than this.
That's considerably.
Not considerable.
Whatever's in the bank account.
We have to, we'll be requesting money that was previously charged to the general fund. I have to go back and request it from the bank to replace it.
And then we'll put it back in the general.
Yeah, and it won't request it.
We need to do that before we transfer the money.
Yeah, so we're gonna clear all this stuff out before we transfer money. Right, as of right now, we have 1,000 in each of our new bank accounts, just as a placeholder to keep the count as we clear up everything else. I guess you guys can make a talk about this before we go on. Debating upgrade.
Well, so I guess let's get a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll make a motion.
Dave, second,
I'll second.
Ed. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye, opposed. Bank update, I've signed everything that I need to sign, Dar has monies deposited, hold them. Just gotta
I
wait.
need to get with their tech people and set up the authorizations, yeah, but I'll get that done this week, but.
Yeah. We got time, because like I said, we wanna make sure everything's, that we got the books right before we do this. Dark brought up a good point this morning, is that we need to come up with a system for knowing when to let Dark release these checks. We have to get them approved, because we only meet monthly, but there's some times where, like today, he's holding more checks than we have in the bank account, because we're waiting for HCR to make that deposit. So that's something something that needs to be more systemized, or at least articulated between the team as we do this. I also see this as an opportunity. We remember when Isaac did audit, he wanted to do a mid-year review. I think that it would be a good time that we entertain the option of going to a new accounting firm at the same time, a new accounting firm to get fresh eyes on it, have Isaac meet, go through all our systems and how we're doing this stuff, our books, and get totally even keel as soon as possible. In the packet is a quote for services from Glenn Smith. We had talked about doing before, but we said, let's give Cunningham Storing another chance, since they had been with us so long. My opinion, and I think that came from me. I wanted to stick with them as long as we could. I'm now making my suggestion and my advice that we move on and have a more dedicated accountant. We've done our accounting before. His per hour prices are
Last page.
$5 an hour cheaper than Cunningham Storing. He'll be able to sign checks and cut them through QuickBooks and meet up. I've talked to him about meeting up with Darwin. It'll be easier to meet up with Darwin, since the Cunningham Storing account is only there on Thursdays. And it's been, and the office could be closed where he works from home. He could coordinate with Darwin easier, I believe. And he's willing to do that. And having him on board when we do that mid-year review with Isaac and figure out the rest of this shenanigans that's happened over the last year with Cunningham Storing. Some of it's just, I know some of the things happen, some of it since this is all going on, things were misclassified this month. It was not stopping, and if it wasn't, if we didn't have Kate on, I would have missed it, and it would have snowballed into another stint of, another term of tabling treasurer's reports, and I don't want to get back into those practices, and I just think it's time to, move on and see what happens from there. That's fine.
Anybody want to make a motion to do that?
Well.
I will make a comment that it is frustrating with Cunningham. I don't know how many times that I went to pick up checks. And they're closed. At one time, they were open on
Tuesdays, or
no, Tuesday through Friday, they were closed on Monday. And then it changed, that was open on Monday and closed on Friday. And the last time I went in to pick them up, their hours posted on the door is Tuesday through Friday. I was there on Thursday. And I was supposed to pick up something Friday, but they were not there Friday. So I had to wait till the following week and I can deal with it. But understand, I'm 12 miles away from Wellsville office, so it makes my coordination a little bit.
As the treasurer, you would recommend making this move?
I would suggest we make the move whenever.
And I think there's gonna be a time where we're hiring both of them. I'd like it for a seamless transition. We should probably just not just pay them their last bill and not talk to them again.
Yeah.
There's probably gonna be some stuff we'll need for her that's already in motion.
Okay, so can, anybody want to make that motion to hire Glenn Smith accounting and bookkeeping? We won't close the other account, but it's fine.
I'll make the motion.
Hey, Bob, second, Dave, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried, we've got some, bills to pay. Motion to pay fourth sector, Cunningham, and sub.
Okay, about the Cunningham, so on the last thing, it says unpaid accounting. Here's another thing that they got a hold of me at the end of last week saying that going back through their books, there's several invoices that they have not received from us, Cunningham Storing. What is your check to say for over there?
2,056 bucks,
2056?
2056.
Okay, that they've submitted invoices to me for all that and their ledger. You see it in your package. If it says a Gmail, probably labeled like Gmail billing or. So if you see that, there's the $90 for the bookkeeping. Now, if you see that 180 and 300, this book is the second negative number going down. Those are checks. Those aren't invoices. They're not attached to an invoice. So the 2056 is not counting them because they said there's no way we could pay those. The other ones seem legit. I don't know how we missed them. Well, the 990 that came with a notice that 990, I mean, I'll take that one because that was on me because they sent the invoice along with a statement saying that they were increasing their rates. And I never looked at page 2. That's the only thing I can think, because I went back and looked at all this stuff to make sure that they were accurate. She told me that don't just worry about this month's, which would be the 563 and 113 that's on your agenda. And then seeing when Darwin came in today, he had a check that they cut to themselves for 2,000. So I'm glad I put this in the agenda because that's why that's like that.
So does this bring us up whole with
That'll
them?
make us whole,
Which,
minus what she's doing today.
the 113 and the 565 makes us whole?
No, the 2056 would make us whole.
And that includes doesn't include these 2 invoices though.
Right, Darcy, you'll look at
It
it.
does include.
Or you just look at
It
my
does.
computer, Darcy.
Okay.
So there's this one from, so, and one of those dates back to 2024, which begs the question, how did we get through an audit with that? These 2 are just check numbers. What was her,
What she told me when I met her was they were applied to older invoices.
these were applied to back invoices, so those aren't due. So the 2006 is this current month. This is this month. She gives 2 invoices this month. These 3 that we missed somehow, probably in her transition to when she came, beginning of the year, something. So we missed those 3 payments. These are current, these 3 payments, then 1 way back,
We
2024.
for a while there, we were not authorizing payment to them. Because we didn't have the reports, and we said, we're not gonna pay them for stuff that we haven't even got. And that went on for months, so I'm not surprised that we have some backlogs.
So this 2,000 is valid for me to sign.
Yes, it is, those are all invoices so those invoices do not have checks. You can't match any of those invoices with a check, so we didn't, it's not we're gonna pay them double, I checked to make sure that any of those invoices that are incorporated in that.
All right, then we need a motion to pay the invoices that we have in our packet, plus the back due invoices for.
Total of $2,056.
No sense.
0 cents.
20.
All right,
So cross out these 113 and 560.
they're part of it.
They're part of it.
2,050.
Correct.
Right, so just one,
Motion,
so moved.
second. Second, Dave. All in favor? Pay the bill, motion carries.
And also the Southern Tier West thing there for 300. That is for two people to join the table, because we're gonna get a table at the conference. Next month, and that's Kate and John. Any other board members who wanna go would be $20 a piece, so I want, before we pay that, I wanna make sure that is accurate, right? Good. Because I need to go through the planning board, so if any board members plan on going, we need to know, so I can add $20 each to that.
I don't know if it's 20, I thought it was 40.
It's on that thing. In the packet, there's a bill.
And I will note that I don't have a check for
20.
your fourth sector 15,000.
Yeah, I sent her a reminder. I'll figure out, I might end up driving more down. Again.
All right, moving on to capital invoices, back page of the first page of the agenda.
I have a question. You just said you don't have a check that we just approved?
Yeah, she got that check, so I gotta go pick it up.
Okay.
Gotta earn my money. So some of these invoices are in this supplemental stapled, packet with Clinton Brown on top, and the other ones are in the original packet. They came in late.
Yeah,
And this is where me and Darwin were talking about, so some of these, oh, and also on the 2,300 for the Belmont hardware, 15 of that, or whatever that number is, remember we got that grant from Area Foundation?
Yeah.
That'll go towards that, close out that with Area Foundation. The 16,000 to Northeast Environmental, they've already conducted that work. This Clinton Brown is 14,111. This will clear us up. This will bring us to the end of that original 45,000 that we had asked, or that we had approved. But we're gonna hold this one until we get money in. This one just got billed this week, so that one has time. The other ones are more important.
You said that this Northeast Environmental did all this work?
Yeah, no, it's all done, and we already have the inspectors reports, and we're rolling on the secret now because of it. And the sports locker is, I bought some signage because HCR just put out that we have mandatory sign requirements for all our sites now. Since we only have small projects, they can just be a corrugated sign. We had to, print it up with a blank spot for the address, so now we just have to like make stickers or put something at each sign, and those will be done, not maybe today, but.
Okay, your list of capital invoices number does not match the quote.
Which one?
Sports locker, you got 199.94.
Oh, it should be 119.
That's what the
Good
sales
catch.
quote says.
Yeah, good catch, sorry. So yeah, correction to the agenda, 119.94, not 199.
are we gonna approve the payment of?
Oh, and
Peter.
in Peter Morse is the down payments on the architectural drawings for 15. Second Street and Andover, and 26 Main Street.
And
You
just so
should
you know,
probably include that first page in that, and then, just because they've done it. And this isn't an invoice, it's just the signature page. There's no dollar amount on those. There's not. Is that? I don't think so, I'm not, maybe I'm skimming it too fast.
and just so you know, with what you guys have authorized payments on, what's currently in the checking account isn't enough to cover it.
That's why are we approving the payment of the Clinton Brown?
Yeah, we're just gonna hold the Clinton Brown check for 14.
I'm not including, I didn't even include that. You take the 16, you take the 15 we owe you, take the 5, that's 46 or 36,000. Plus, well, you might have a couple $1,000 left.
And well, none of them are, we can hold all of them, because none of these will be late until the week after next.
So you think this money could possibly be there today?
And that money should be there today, so we just kind of look at it.
I'll check when I get home, get stuff straightened out, and if the drawdown has been received, then I'll sign the checks and mail them. If not, I'm gonna hold it. Agreed?
So the motion should reflect that, shouldn't it?
Yes.
You just made that?
Yes.
So that makes the motion to pay the capital invoices once the money is cleared the bank.
Correct.
Here, second, all in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carried, funding,
I have no updates for any.
great, infrastructure, no updates.
Don't have your board of directors project report. The project report.
Let's try.
Yeah, you can't hurt it. You can go through that as fast as you like, but
It's the big thing.
well, I can just go through and not even have to look at that to get the big things. Asbestos testing is in, site declarations are in, contamination declarations are in for all of our properties. Next step is to finalize the seeker on all the properties to be able to spend capital projects money. The only asbestos was found was a little bit in Main Street in the Friendship first floor. I believe it qualifies as a small project. It won't have to be notified to
Main
the
Street
DOL.
Friendship?
Yeah, Main Street Friendship, there's some linoleum tiles, 9x9 tiles on the first floor. They have to come out. So we'll start looking see if we want to do that as part of the stabilization / sealing the envelope, or do it as a separate project, the asbestos abatement. We go either way, but that's been identified. But more asbestos has been identified in the Thayer Street project, which we don't have. I'm going to recommend that as a brownfield site to see if brownfield cleanup money can help that element.
Which one is that?
Project, Thayer Street, Houghton.
That's the,
Disco barn.
did we go into an agreement with them?
No. We are only assisting him in ways we can push him further with his building,
Who's he?
the owner.
Private owner.
What is it?
His goal is
I
to,
thought it counted.
he wants to turn it back into dorms, but he doesn't even have he needs to be able to go after money. We're not gonna say, we can't give you any money, but we can point you in the right direction towards getting stuff.
But we just spent money.
Yeah, we just spent money. That's the money that we spent was approved for the house that we ended up not getting through a Ferry Foundation. We'd already hired the guys, so we moved it over there. So we actually took some off of it.
Did we approve that?
Yeah,
Okay. I
And-
remember that,
but we're not gonna spend money on getting that asbestos out, but it is a good candidate for some of the brownfield discussions that we've had. So well, so that's all we got for asbestos, and we are working on closing the O'Connor Street property. Use approved for the sale of that. Roller Street has RFPs going out for the mechanicals. And for the demolition of that garage. And once the secrets are done, we'll move forward on that, but we're getting our ducks in a row to make sure that we're ready to roll on that when it goes. What were you saying, Doug?
When these property sales, the lots and stuff, that money is our money, correct?
Correct.
So when we ultimately make the transfer to the few banking accounts, the general fund is our money, correct? So there should be more than $50,000 transferring into that account, correct? Because you set the $50,000 somewhere in the past.
That's just to match the million, yeah. That's the match on the million that we set in our application for the million. We had to put some skin in the game, so we set 50,000 towards that million. We'll be using it for our own cash flow. But there should.
Well, where's the number on the total that we've accumulated over the years for our money from the sales of the house and the other lots?
That's on the treasurer's report under the general fund. But we need to get some of it reimbursed because from grant request.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's $50,000.
That's a separate
That's,
line.
yeah, that's a separate line if you look on it.
We had something like $154,000 to sell of properties. Right?
Okay. So ultimately, in our general fund, there should be somewhere over $154,000, is that
No,
what it is?
because right now it's classified as general fund that she's charged to other towns. So we have to clear up what is actually gonna be moved over.
So this 150,000 is not correct?
It will be.
It'll be,
So then when we get done over.
everything cash isn't there,
Huh?
right? The cash isn't there.
I know that.
On paper, yeah.
Ultimately, when you get all this mucky stuff straightened out.
Yeah,
That's how we should be.
What would be the total number going into the general fund?
we should be up to that with this number, 144, I'm guessing.
Okay, plus the one that we're just sold. Or is that?
Yeah, no, it's not it, we haven't gotten money for that yet.
It's always been a little hurt with me that I don't know how much money is really ours.
Me too, that's what's kind of catapulted us into,
Okay,
that was the biggest red flag that when we started going through this whole debacle with the conference there.
okay. So when everything, when you guys tell me everything is done, there's no outstanding checks. Then we'll write checks out of Cunningham, or out of our current account.
Yeah,
To each one of the other two accounts.
right,
And one of them will be something over $150,000 into the general,
which should be up to 144.
or 140.
Plus the sale of Cuba, which by then should
Cuba
be.
and O'Connor,
And
Okay,
then whatever's left is what's in
right.
yeah.
the slush account.
Right, that's in the slush.
I don't see Cuba on there.
I thought we were closed.
I thought we were.
Did it close?
But
Okay.
Yeah, but it, I'm saying I thought it closed last month, it's, I got a message last month that a new use sign, everything was all done, and then I looked.
And then all these emails are talking about abstracts never being done and surveys, so I don't think we closed.
No, it's closed, I'm saying that's why it wasn't on the agenda, because until last week it was closed, and then I looked in the bank account and saw nothing, no funds, where's the funds, I asked, and then I got into contact with the buyer, they said that their lawyer said that he had done everything on his end, I got a hold of our attorney, he said, no, we've been waiting on all this stuff forever.
So we're not closed.
No, well, yeah, no, I don't know, we haven't received funds, that's.
I have to sign a closing document, I believe, wouldn't I, or no?
Yeah, we signed all the transfer documents.
Yeah, so I shouldn't need to sign anything else, so.
And I thought
just been waiting for money to hit the bank.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the guy with the C.
And we're live. That's, all I got for the structure.
So, okay. So where does that leave us? Housing study.
How many RFP is still out?
When's that due?
And then,
Okay. So we put out that vacant property reporting form on our, on our website, and we sent it out. I think we got like 100 in the first 48 hours.
Good.
We're well over that now. We've been in touch with Ptolemy Building Blocks. We pay for that subscription. We're trying to funnel them through there, so we'll be able to find them on the map, compare them to properties around them, and just get more analytics and data from that, which we hope to roll into the counties.
Did you get all of County Route 20 between Cuba and Friendship?
No, but we definitely got the whole town
All
of,
of Whitesville.
Whitesville.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can't throw a rock in Whitesville without having a property on our list.
Is there some on County Route 20?
There's probably some, I haven't looked at it in a while, got a little.
Say, and I could do a slow ride home.
No, but it's gonna be a good tool to say, look at what the we always talk hypothetically, oh, my town is this many, well, look at how many there are. Why are there so many? And what I think it's gonna generate is a good catalyst for code enforcement, revitalization or whatever it is. I think it justifies going after big money, grant money, to say, hey, the towns and municipalities, or the county as a whole, there's a big problem with the perception of our neighborhoods by our neighbors. It's not just us in the professional business, these are all coming in from neighbors and concerned citizens about these places. Not all of them can be something done with them, you know, someone owns the property, and then, but who can enforce them? Code enforcement. Why are there derelict vehicles? Why can't they do anything about this? Why can't people mow their lawn? Those aren't things we're ever gonna get involved in, but we can get involved in making code enforcement better. which would help everybody.
Okay.
And
Question.
Yep,
There's a roof falling in on a house, but there's a camper sitting on the property. Is it considered vacant?
yes.
Okay.
The house is vacant.
How much
I just,
Russ,
the property's not.
is that a motion to fix the roof? No, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. You don't.
You're just gonna leave this open.
Yeah, we're just gonna leave it open and hopefully it just keeps gaining steam, and now we're systemizing it into the mapping software. What else are we doing with Kate? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, we'll put it in our newsletter too, so our
Yes,
next round
for
of
the
newsletter will
next
be in there, so
newsletter.
it's gonna keep gaining traction. It's slowing down quite a bit, but those first couple of days was overwhelming, because all three of us are getting emails, so it's like, holy cow, you can see it for 90.
So I see two for County Route 20, County Road 20, 8964, 8972.
I have a,
Say those numbers
I
again.
have more.
8964
Uh-huh.
and 8972. That's not necessarily with all of them, that was as of
Yeah,
Friday.
we'll take a drive. That's not.
And also in talking about the housing study and the software that we have, the Ptolemy building block software, Kate's been putting in the tax sale history. So we'll be able to overlay these problem properties with tax sales and see how many of them have been in and out of the tax sale process. And also the IDA's brownfield committee met for the first time, and we went through, did some identification of properties around the county that have potential site contamination that could be considered brownfields. I put that list into Ptolemy building blocks as well, here with that group, so we're starting to get some good use out of this.
We're still working.
Oh, they're still working on it, yeah, it's not a public document or anything like that, but it's just something else to compare our metrics with, that we've been wanting to use that software for so long for something good.
33 properties is what
Yeah.
they started with.
Yeah,
Consultant started off at 33 and he hasn't even met with anyone. That's just
yeah, that's, yeah,
That was
it's
just-
way more.
general information that he was able to pull off the net.
And also, we put in our reporting form, there is one for, it's up to you, is this possible? So we can maybe even filter some from this, find some out of this process too, so. And if you look at item E, it says both these intern, we were thinking
Back
about
up to that, so we have brownfield monies now available,
the
right?
county,
The
the IDA.
land bank does, right?
No, we don't have.
We don't personally, but there's money out there for land banks.
There is, yeah,
Yeah,
but more
'cause-
importantly, we have statutory privilege to hold properties without chain of title. So there's just special powers that the land bank has that we'll be using, so we'll be.
Yeah, so we're out there,
with the DOT.
we're
Yeah,
as a team.
yeah, so you'll probably be signing we're gonna, by next meeting, maybe even between, we're gonna try to get a MOU with the DEC to, help the IDA and the land bank to be less liable. It's all attached to liability of the county.
Good luck with that.
No, it's a proven thing for land banks, yeah, so land banks.
Because it's DC,
Yeah.
It removes the liability.
Yeah, it takes the liability off because the land bank said it. And that's why we're at the table.
Is everybody familiar with the brownfields term? Does anybody want clarification on that?
well, give a brief version, yeah.
So basically brownfields, you think green fields, literally cornfields. A developer comes in, wants to build a factory. Brownfields, they're a site that previously had something on it that was sketchy. Oil, PCBs, whatever contaminants. And because of the liability concerns, they just sit. Because nobody wants to be the owner of all that. Because when you get the ownership, you become part of that trail. And so you can be fined or taken to task for it. So the liability concerns that Jason's talking about is that even if the land bank, once we have it formed, even if the land bank is in that chain of ownership, we are automatically not liable for those things. So.
And that entices developers to keep it in the land bank's offers or in our possession while they work on it. And it stimulates development and takes the risk away from people that.
The IDA's agreement or contract right now is to do this inventory and then do a certain number of what they call phase one environmentals. And that's basically looking at what happened on that site in the past and getting all the information together in a pile.
It's largely investigatory, so it's where-
And then determining, from there, we'll determine which are the priority, meaning they have the best chance of getting rehab. And we'll pick up to 5 or whatever the number is. We'll move on to phase 2, which is actually punching holes in the dirt.
Is this,
Figuring it out. And it's all
grant funded,
I
county
thought
fund?
the state already had Mr. Brownfields.
They
They
have,
do.
5 years.
they have a list, but this is the list beyond the list. Because what they have is only the ones they know about. It's just like the oil wells.
How many was that we looked at? It was not even half of what we've come up with, right?
Yeah, it was-
Yeah, it was less than half of what 30.
So they only got called in on ones that were the super bad ones historically.
Yeah.
And when it was triggered. So,
Now, are we gonna share our information with them?
yeah,
No.
no, with
With the
IDA,
With the idea.
Yes, not with the state to add them to their list.
no, not, only if it gets to a certain point where we need the funds. To actually do the remediation,
Yeah. they have to approve.
then you're stuck. Yeah, but.
Not
No,
until we need their approval to move anyway.
we don't wanna add Billy Joe Bob's, warehouse building to some other list.
Yeah.
That they're not aware of, because then it's a liability.
Just
for-
clarifying.
I'm moving on to BOCES intern.
We're just looking into getting an intern to crunch some of his data that's coming in and do other stuff. So we haven't really moved on it since Ptolemy's kind of took over the bulk of.
Your summary that we haven't covered.
Let's go, what point? Major achievements. John met with code enforcement in Almond and Andover in Grover to go over what that looks like for the redevelopment of those, especially when it comes to the floodplain. I don't see any big pitfalls with the floodplain as long as we build to, the Almond property gets built above the floodplain, and Andover, since it's already there and established, it does not need to be risen up. So that's, doesn't have to be lifted, which has been a big question that we had, and so that is pretty much all I have for that. Goals for next month. Again, we're gonna have a table at the local governance conference. Clinton Brown said he might come down and, have a little presentation of this friendship project at our table. I offered that to him. I already mentioned we're gonna release RFPs. The shed at Grover will be placed this month. They had a little delay because their teacher had some family emergency. But that is, we've coordinated to be able to move that. We're just gonna.
Is that gonna be in the way of a demo of the garage?
Nope. Well, we're gonna put it won't.
Thank you, we're demoing the garage.
We're demoing the garage.
You're back to the demoing?
Yeah, we can't say, we weren't gonna demo it because we thought it could be contributed to the tax credits if we save it, and it doesn't matter either way. And everyone who we've asked professionalizing on our in-house cleaning is tear it down, it's just.
Just last
I
time I
was
heard it was a state.
Well, I was saving it for that reason, it's possible,
Historical.
part of the historical credit is not available.
If we had that triple C team, they'd be taking the car board by board, that would have been the way to go, but.
They got cut anyway.
Mhm.
That program. Americorps.
No
Yeah.
more.
Just gotta notice that they wanted to put people in it here this fall. They've got.
They're probably on this budget.
Going forward, yeah. John and Kate are going to the land bank conference up in Oswego this week, which I think is gonna be a great experience for them. We get to see just talk to other land bankers in the state and some good trainings there. We have to, now that we have the asbestos, there's no asbestos at those projects that we partnered with Andover Historic for. We're gonna get a scope of work and try to get quotes for the work there. It's 2 roofs and one of them some painting. Anything over what I think that we authorized $100,000 to them. Anything above that, they said they'll be able to cover, so. More on that when it comes. Again, these are all moving slow.
Be clear, it's a lot of painting,
Yeah, they're big buildings,
you know,
and it's a
the
lot of
one that is getting painted.
Yeah, the one's
big, so.
huge. They call it a castle. That's how big it is.
Yeah.
we're gonna be modifying the budget. We're gonna start getting ready for 2026 budget, which is due by Halloween to the state. So, we wanna make, again, this is perfect timing for all this stuff that we're getting new bank accounts, getting new accounting, getting Ed Isaac to do a mid-year review. All this is coming perfect time to roll us into budget season. I couldn't be happier about it. As you can tell by the grin on my face. I love budgeting. And then we're gonna be asking for more money. At the approval from ACR is pretty much our big goal, and then updates or upcoming events. I mentioned the Global Governance Conference, the conference in Oswego, the Land Bank Summit is coming up in Detroit in September, and the National Roundfield Conference in August in Chicago, Detroit, Chicago.
You're planning to go to both those?
As of now, I'd like to go to both of those.
Do we have to approve that?
Yeah, so we got time. I was gonna get,
We should approve, yes.
yeah, but I'll have something to
Bring
approve.
estimates.
Yeah, right, I'll do that, because we got, and when we rework our budget, we'll see what we have there for travel and stuff, and if anybody else. There's placeholders, so I don't forget to talk about them, and, that's it, all I got for PD report.
Yeah, we started.
Old business. Haven't heard anything back from the, or from the county. I sent an email to the county attorney asking if she could meet with us and any other county leadership, Krista and Brooke and Terry Ross about that request and about how it's going, how the new law that there are new policies that they're coming up with to sell tax properties that they're working on. She said, yeah, I'd be happy to put us all together, and then she's gonna get with them and hasn't got back. So I'll follow up on that.
Did they announce a tax sale? I thought I heard they did.
It's late.
It's a way of fall. Yeah, September tax sale, but that has nothing, hopefully that has nothing to do with us because we don't buy tax sale properties, we buy tax foreclosed properties. It's not the same thing, but historically they've just treated us like a tax sale customer. We're not a tax sale customer, we're not going to auction, even though we have to go time. That's just not.
We always had to go to auction.
No, we don't go to the auction, we would get them right before.
Oh, before.
And they would list us as an auction, like we won the auction at these prices. Hopefully, that's why I wanna meet with them, hopefully that the new way they do it lays that out, because we have the special powers in the state government, in the state tax law, to get them a certain way, let's use all that that we can. That would mean that they give us a property, we appraise it, we put the money that it's worth, if it's worth more than we paid for it, or worth more than it was owed in taxes, then we put that money in escrow in case somebody came and said, hey, I only owed 10,000 for in taxes, you sold it to the land bank for 20, where's my $10,000 profit? We would have some kind of agreement there if it was in writing, or however, that's what I want to talk to them about.
Okay.
But we should have a good system set up from the beginning, so we're not arguing with it and going back and forth. Open board seat, still we have one open board seat, and we have one guest, so hopefully he
can I
enjoys his
motion
time.
to?
Ask him if he's still interested.
Meetings don't typically go over 2 hours.
Yeah, this is a long one, and Dave, you drove, right, so he's stuck here. So. Yeah, the shed project, again, board of directors portal, almost skipped that over. Dave, do you remember a couple months ago, we had talked about streamlining how we get information to the board of directors? Yeah. Was your idea, we talked about possibly the step, instead of them getting lost in your emails, providing the option for land bank direct, officers to have a dedicated land bank email address. Would that solve the problem, or would you rather have a link inside our webpage where you could go and see updates, day-to-day updates of what's going on?
Well, probably the address would be better for me.
Like an email address, because then you just log into that and everything, the whole gets dedicated only land bank. Okay, well, anything, so I'll send out an email about that to everybody and see if we can get those going. I think that would help you, I think that'd be, comprehensive. The shed project,
An email if you guys have.
yeah,
Somebody
Put it
would
in
take
the
the
land
board.
yeah, be like that. It'd be ACLBC board member at. You go, right, unless the county want to give something. shed project that's going in, and the feasibility study, everything that we need is, we've already can talk about that at night.
You wanna do it again?
Let's go.
Round two. That's a threat on live YouTube.
I would give up to you guys, just listen. And that's it for old business.
New business.
So that bulk property purchasing, well, I was approached by an individual who wants to, what they call a buy box. He wants to get a bunch of properties that people feel, how it works, I guess, you can cold call or find through listings, get leads to people who might want to sell their property at wholesale price. He would buy those properties at wholesale, bundle them into, say, 10 properties. And I told him it'd be best if it was in a certain area, maybe 4 in Wellsville, some here, so we're buying separate packages based on the neighborhood. But hypothetically, comes to us with 10 properties, he gets them at wholesale price, we buy them for what he paid for them, and he gets exclusive rights to develop those properties as the builder, not to keep them forever, but he would, the way to get a non-compete for the development. I spoke to him, he's gonna get some examples of how that works, some numbers around, and he will present it at our next meeting. But any questions you have about that in the meantime, you can just fire at me to make sure that he comes in with.
You get a name or?
Yeah, it's Drew from West Side Construction, who's done some work for us. He likes working with us. He sees it a way to keep being able to do land bank work and not have to worry if he's gonna lose out bids.
And he does work up north with other banks too, right?
Yeah, he's worked with other land banks, and he's done.
Where's he at? Buffalo?
Roger.
Churchville? Yeah,
Churchville. Media guidance?
HCR has just released that we have to post signage at all our sites that show their specs. And also, we can't release press releases or documents that talk about our grant funds without certain language and authorization through them. It's normal for CDBG grants, all that stuff, now they're just applying it to Land Bank Initiative for the first time. So I'm not totally familiar with it, but it's gonna take some gearing up and it's gonna eat up some of our hours here trying to get a system on board for that. That's it.
Those signs have to be different than the ones that you're already used.
Yeah, they're dedicated, have to be, they give you the color, but it has to be their color purple, like the color.
So we're gonna put 2 signs there, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any correspondence?
Mhm.
Anybody? Go to the order?
One thing for me. I do have a meeting with a developer on Thursday, so I've got 2 projects. And the ask is, would you like me to have a conversation about 4 to 6 Main Street?
Yeah, developers, that will also manage at the end, or they just builders?
Unclear at this point.
Unclear, okay, yeah, for sure.
You could say that the land bank has this property in this.
You're okay to include that
In our-
opportunity?
In
Yeah.
our possible
Possible
inventory.
tax credits and the other subsidies that we can bring to the table, we'll make it, and our plans for doing their financial modeling.
Anything else? Next meeting,
June 16th. Will we make it?
might as well just camp out here that day, huh? You're the all day.
Oh, then I'm not riding with you then.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Thank
second
you.
it.
All in favor?
Aye. Time is.
Oh, that's right.
11:13.
Darn, that's darn. Did you check the reports locker? National